Hi, good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Coffee Table Talks. I am your host, Rachel Arnold, the Human API with Secure Nation. We already have comment people. Hi, Rob. How are you? Danny commented too. I don't know, Danny, why I didn't show up, but we saw you and we said, hey. So that happened too. You can chat from the LinkedIn, the Twitch, and the YouTube, and it'll show up streaming in the sidebar right over there. Wait, over there. Okay? So don't embarrass your family. Say nice things. Also, ask questions. Questions are always welcome. We love it. They're always great. Hey, everyone. And as always, in the background is Meg Jet Tata, who is moderating. So if you try to sell some stuff or put some Sketchbox looking links up in there, she's going to kick you from the chat. It's not that we don't love you. We just don't love scammy things. Okay, great. With me, as always, is my wonderful co-host, Will McCullen. Yay!
Yeah. Oh, man, this is going to be crazy because, as you know, just before we started, I'm having audio problems, right?
Yep.
Because I'm running through Linux and OBS and virtual mics and all that kind of stuff.
You're so fancy.
Well, I did an OS upgrade and it's not quite operating the way it should. So now I'm doing the whole thing with a little bit of a delay in my headphones. So now I sound really weird to myself. It's
Lovely. So Will, when he's not making fancy audio-visual connections, is the program manager at the IT Center for Excellence at Pima Community College in Tucson, Arizona. He not only configures fancy audiovisuals, he is also fancy. Helping out all the students over there, which are awesome, and we will probably get to. There'll be a QR code that comes up at some point. There's another housekeeping thing. QR codes are at the top. That's the company that Rachel works for. Right there. It's great. You should check it out. Click the thing. Follow. You'll see more Coffee Table Talks announcements in the future, which we do on a weekly basis, mostly on Fridays. Haider is our guest today.
Hello.
Hold on. Meg, where's the Haider QR code? We got to put his up because that leads to your LinkedIn. Haider's like, you made me a what? Yes, I did. I made you a QR code. So Haider is, don't let me screw up your title. Stop me if I screw this up.
No worries.
Global head of threat intelligence at Snowflake. No? Yes.
Threat intelligence and threat detection. Yep.
And threat detection. See, I did screw it up. I missed some pieces.
Okay.
So what is that? What do you do? I know what you do, but there might be some other people that don't know what you do. And I may learn something new. So
Yeah. So, hello, Rachel. Hello, Will. It's really happy to be here. And hello to the lovely guests who are joining as well. So, as a global head of threat detection and threat intelligence at Snowflake, I guess I'll start with the threat detection role. We are constantly evaluating and I should say mitigating risks that are presented and relevant to our organization and mitigating them via detective controls, aka detections, right? Alerts that are then triaged by our security operations and incident response team. So, I work with and have a team of really, really smart and talented detection engineers. And this is a very similar role to, I think going back to, folks that if they've ever worked in a security operations center or other environments, there are different names for these teams, like the content development team, the alert development team. So that is that portion of the team that I manage. And then the other team, the threat intelligence team, is constantly looking at intel and trying to help our organization be a bit more proactive with the intelligence that we're able to gather. Right, we want to help the organization really just be proactive with all the threats that are out there, because you have threat actors that are constantly chatting about stuff. You want to understand their motives, why they're potentially going to target us, attack behaviors. And again, the key emphasis on the word proactive, right? So that we're able to make proactive security decisions to help, thwart, detect, disrupt any sort of, adversarial behavior that may be coming our way or that may be relevant to us.
Very cool. Will's at a second lag. Are you lagging, Will? He's like, hold on. It's still coming in. Everything Haider just said. This makes me sad that Levy could not join us today. So Levy is threat and detection response, like dark web living. Like, we love Levy. They are another co-host of ours that sometimes comes on, but life things happen. So today a life thing happened. That's really awesome. So did you just wake up one day and you're like, guess what I'm gonna do?
That's exactly it. I just woke up and snapped my fingers and got to where I am. No, I mean it's a journey. I mean, I think it's been I'm aging myself now. Almost like over 10 years now that I've been in the industry. It all started at my college. Graduated high school, got into college. You're sort of challenged with the many different career paths, and for me, wanting to make my parents proud, and being an adult, and adulting, I should say. So it's like I got to pick the right degree to make money and do things and
Right.
be someone. And honestly, yeah, I had a really keen interest in cyber, and so I sort of picked that up as the sort of focus of my information uh, uh, technology degree. We at the school I went to, George Mason University. The IT degrees have sort of many different flavors and focuses, or I should say concentrations. And the security one just really piqued my interest. It was really cool to learn about hackers and attacks, and cloud technologies were new at that time. I mean, there was just so much that at that time it just really piqued my interest, and I chose that as my focus. And while I was in school, there was this like debate about certifications versus like work experience and what's the best path to take. And I really just tried getting my feet wet, and looked for internships, and I got my first internship at a small company called, or a large company called Carasoft, and they are like sort of software resellers in the area, and it just
I'm familiar with Carousel.
oh, there you go. Did IT admin work as an intern, and it was a great experience, great team, um, and I was able to just kind of work with a bunch of tools and technologies. But it was right after that I got another internship at a startup company called TruShield Security Solutions, which now they've been acquired, I think, a few times, and now they're called Avertium, and they're like sort of an MSSP, and that's where I think I worked in my first SOC, and it was eye opening that this even exists. There's this like I almost equate it to being like a virtual security guard, right? Like you're on the front lines virtually looking at various alerts, network patterns and traffic, and you're doing this more often than not 24/7. You're doing shift work, and that's what really helped me sort of figure out like this is what I want to do. And it was while I was still in school, so I was going to school full time, interning, and eventually that turned into going to work full time, and that sort of just opened the door of the security operations, and working in a SOC and being a security analyst, and then gravitating towards leadership, right? As I sort of work there, I just always found myself gravitating towards being in a leadership position, and here I am today. I mean, it's been a fun ride, but that's sort of how I got started. And threat detection, I will say, is a bit interesting, and you know you're either the team building the content or you're the team responding. And after a while, I should say, responding to incidents and working in a SOC, doing it 24/7 can get tiring. Alert fatigue is real. So I still sort of wanted skin in the game, but not having to be on call and not having to work, 24/7. So.
Danny has a good question for you. Were any and slash how many of these internships were paid?
Yeah, that's a great question. So my first IT admin internship at Carasoft was paid. It's like half of what minimum wage is today. At that time, it was like whatever minimum wage was, and I took it. Right, I was trying to get my feet wet. It wasn't really, it wasn't time bound, I should say, but it was paid, and the security analyst internship after was unpaid, right? And I took it, right? So it was almost like I'm going to make the sacrifice of not getting paid to get that experience in cyber. And so that one wasn't paid for the internship period, which wasn't really time out either. They just ended up offering me, they liked me and they ended up offering me a job as a full-time security analyst. So I went from getting not paid to getting a salary.
That's good. They had they almost tried you. It was almost like tryouts.
Yeah, unfortunately, there were interns that did not get the same offer I got. So it definitely was, yeah.
Oh, poor Jeff. I did a non-paying internship too. Many lessons learned.
It's tough. It's tough. I don't see that many anymore, although I'm not looking for internships. But right. I would hope that companies are taking care of interns, because travel costs, right? Like cost of living, right? Like I would hope that companies are taking care of their folks.
Yeah, we all hope that, definitely. I've worked for a couple of different companies where they've had internship programs and they were all paid, but there was definitely a time, it was 90 days, right? They rinse and repeat, and a lot of times they would use it as a hiring type pipeline sort of thing. So those things are out there. You just got to go ask and find out and look and throw your hat in the ring. Why not? Right?
Yeah, I absolutely encourage anyone who's studying. I mean, the hands-on experience that you're able to acquire and get in the real world experience, it's unmatched. You're not. I mean, I'm not going to say you're not going to get that in a lab, or you're not going to get that anywhere else. But in my personal experience, it's some of the best best experience that you can get.
Yeah, Rob shares a situation or not a situation, not his perspective. Sorry. Look, y'all, I gotta apologize. You'll hear Haider coughing and me sounding silly and I'm in a brain fog. Will is the only functioning person on the coffee table today. All right. I jumped into our pre-show and I was like, Haider, I gotta tell you, I got COVID over the weekend, after 4th of July weekend, and I have been so down for the count. Yesterday was the first day I felt like a human. Today, I am medicationed all the way, all the stuff. I've got 2 types of decongestant and some prescription strength Zyrtec going on and a bunch of other stuff. It's going around, just to let you know. And we work at home. I'm like, where did I get this from? I have no idea. But anyway.
Are you kidding me? You have kids.
I know. The floor lickers bring it home every time, man. Every time. They're terrible. I tell them that too.
You bring up some awesome points there, Haider, because I mean, really, companies, if they're doing internships and if they are, internships are difficult, right? Because for a company, taking the extra time to train folks as they're going through, yeah, that's a cost for the company. But if the company is getting production from them, then yeah, that really needs to be a paid situation. They need to give back. But coming from a college perspective, this is a really strong example of why businesses and community colleges or universities need to really start working together more to be able to tie that in. And instead of just teaching theory and then leaving that aspect to the business to teach the real world, that's ridiculous.
Yeah, I mean, to your first point about getting interns paid, I think there's a lot of benefits in establishing sort of that pipeline and partnership with colleges and universities. In fact, I know Snowflake has a global sort of, I should say, partnerships globally with universities all over the world, to include India and other parts where we have business. And I've worked with many interns, and it really makes a difference that you can actually assign some really cool projects to interns, right? That's going to be their focus. It gives them the opportunity to learn, to put into practice what they've been working on at school and some of their skills. And it also helps them see how those skills are applied practically, right? Like I've always heard, I'm not really a coder. I've done a few classes that, during my time at school, but I've always heard, folks get really nervous when it comes to coding. But what ends up happening is they realize in the workforce, everyone's just, picking different pieces of code from others and putting it together. And when they find that out, they're like, oh man, like, I didn't know that. I thought I had to come up with everything myself. But in reality, like there's so much sharing and there's so many insights that you don't get. And for the company, you're able to really develop a strong pipeline for your team, right? You can't always have a top heavy team, right? Eventually folks pick up and they leave, they get better opportunities, they want to grow in their careers. You want to have that pipeline for you and just give opportunities to others. And you never know, like it's in cyber, especially, it's a small community.
Yeah. It is a small community, but that makes it kind of great though too. If you guys have been following the coffee tables for a little while, you've heard me talk about my friend Quinn. Quinn is a family friend of mine and Joshua's who just like a year and a half ago got into school for IT locally. And y'all, he got a job offer yesterday.
Awesome.
Wow.
Was so excited. You have no idea. It was whoa. And I was like, I don't feel good. Right. But it was the one little bright spot. And yesterday, whenever I got that message and he was like, yes, and this is how much, I was like, oh, like I know how great that is for him and
That's awesome.
how life-changing it is for his family. Like they just had a baby too. They had Sage. She's adorable. I gotta get better so I can go snuggle and get some baby cuddles. But guys, it is amazing. So and he like just he's not even graduated yet. Not even graduated yet.
That's awesome.
I know. But because he's so like and so there's not a program like Will's here locally. I've talked to Will about this ad nauseum. I'm like, do you know how life-changing that would have been for me personally if that was something that I had in my life? I would have been so ahead of it. I could have been like Haider. I don't know if you guys realize this, but does anybody else feel like 10 years in this industry is 100 years compared to 10 years in any other industry? I'm just saying, if you've been in this industry for 10 years, you feel so old. Any other industry, they're like 10 years, that's nothing. That's a quarter. You're not even done yet. Like
yeah, well, the other aspect of the industry, right, is that to be practical about it, because things are changing so fast, developing so much, to be practical about it, you need to be able to match what is being learned and what is being taught at the time with what's happening in the real world. And if we can build an ecosystem where we're all sharing that information, then that development can work together across companies as well. So coming from an education point of view, Haider, if you are a student, you're wanting to get into that type of work, where would you focus your talents? Where would you focus what you need to learn and how to prepare yourself best for getting into that type of position?
And Will, your question is specifically like, obviously the field of cyber, correct?
Well, into the threat analysis. I mean, your love, your passion, what you're doing.
Yeah. Folks often ask me how to get on or into threat detection, and it's a bit of a journey because it's a team that's, I'm not going to say it's new, but it's officially being recognized now as its own sort of team. The way that folks get into threat detection, this specific field, it's hard to find or hire engineers or analysts without experience, specifically for threat detection. And the reason for that is is the job that we have is building content for a security operations center or just an ops function to triage. But what I will say to be to answer your question is folks from all different backgrounds in cyber can make their way into threat detection. And what I mean by that is, if your passion is pen testing, offensive security, red teaming, and the likes, those individuals make great threat detection engineers because they think like an attacker. And that's who we're trying to stop and prevent. I would say there's that. If you're into, coding and programming, there are a lot of opportunities, not only in threat detection, right, but specifically threat detection. There's a shift that we're making in the industry, and it's called detection as code, right? The last thing you want is to have a detection that you've built. You just sort of fire and forget. That thing needs love and care and maintenance. You can't just forget about a detection because there is another team on the opposite side who's triaging that. So there's constant maintenance that's associated with that. And so, we should be treating detections as code the same way you have a, software development lifecycle. There should be a detection development lifecycle where you're, understanding the purpose of why you're building something and, just going all the way through to the maintenance phase where you're actively looking at it, and those coding skills and can really come in handy because we're starting to build and treat detections as software. If you start out the way I did as an analyst, right, you are working the alerts, so you feel the pain and you understand sort of the you build the muscles, I should say, of responding to those alerts, so you can eventually work your way to building content. You become more familiar with different types of attacks, what alerts work well, which don't, right? So really, if you think about it, whether you're on the offensive side or you're sort of like a programmer or a coder, or you're doing working as a SOC analyst, I think there's a way to find you can make your way into threat detection. But it is I wouldn't say there's it's not that easy to do without experience. I will say.
Okay, here's a question for you.
Yeah.
Feel free to dance around this as much as you'd like, because you don't want to give away too much of how your team or things approach things, because you want to give away stuff to the enemy, right? But for the sake of students and for some of those out there, and because I think you can do it very well, could you articulate how, when you have your firewall at home or wherever, and you're watching all these events come in from all over the world, how do you take all those different events and start to make sense out of it into something that you can really enact upon?
Yeah,
do you feel comfortable?
Yeah. That's a terrific question.
So why I like Will.
No, that's really a terrific question. So there's two angles here, right? One is like the threat detection angle, and the other, I'm going to say, is like a threat intelligence angle, and they sort of they mesh together really well. When you're analyzing events for be it your firewall or across your enterprise, your own endpoint, or whatever, you're trying to look for trends and patterns and things that shouldn't be happening, right? So let's take an example of a firewall. If your firewall rules are set up to where you're configured appropriately, and you have this thing locked down, to only specific ports that you want. Let's just say 80 and 443. So that's HTTP and HTTPS. Then the only traffic that you should be seeing, right, inbound, outbound, is web traffic. Now, if you're monitoring, and I'm going to keep it focused on this firewall example, Will, if you're monitoring your packets and your traffic, and you start seeing, and you will, if you ever set up a firewall at home, packets from China that's hitting, port 21, FTP 22, SSH, right? Like you go on, it's stuff that shouldn't be hit. RDP 3389, right? That's not a good sign. And then hopefully you have this thing locked down, right, where those are not open. But you're looking for sort of those trends, like what is, and this happens whether you're in a lab or you're working in the enterprise. What is expected behavior versus unexpected behavior? And it sort of blends it sort of transitions us into what we do as detection engineers, which is threat modeling, right? We want to work with our, we don't know it all. By all means, we have to work with cloud engineers, product developers, just the entire org of engineers to really understand what is expected for this product we're trying to secure, this corporate environment. Should that port be open? Should there be access from this country? Right. So it's really a game of, you want to ensure, your company and organization has good cyber hygiene and posture, and you're hardened, and you want to understand what that means, and then you want to start looking for those anomalies, activity that shouldn't happen, and piece that together and present that to your security operations team, their SOC, the IR team, to start looking at and working with. And I'm going to just jump now and pivot on the threat intelligence side, right? You want to start looking at, why are you getting hit from, certain countries or certain IP addresses? Is there a theme? Is this, are these IPs or TTPs tied to a said threat actor? And really help make sense of the activity that you're observing, and from a different angle, from a perspective of like, techniques that are being, you're being hit with. One of the things that we do and try to understand is, we're monitoring for like domain impersonation as an example. We want to understand who's out there putting together lookalike domains that map back to our organization. So I work for Snowflake right now, and you could, there's so many lookalike domains like Snowflake with a 0 or a 1 instead of the L, right? And really try to understand, okay, who's doing this? Why are they doing this? Clearly, if they're if they're doing this, it's for nefarious reasons, and piece together this that puzzle. And with threat intelligence specifically,
it's almost like building a criminal profile.
Absolutely. I mean, this is like the equivalent, for when you think Intel. I mean, it's like what the intelligence organizations that belong to governments do, right? They're collecting data and sifting through data, trying to make sense of maybe the mindset of a threat actor, and trying to predict their behaviors, understand their behaviors, so they can predict future attacks. It's all of that. It's a really interesting field that I will say I've always been on the receiving end. I've always received threat intelligence, and I was blessed with the opportunity to sort of build out this team at Snowflake. So I'll say I'm not a threat intelligence SME by any means, but it's been really fun, being given the opportunity to build out this team, and sort of build that skill set and that muscle. This I should say this late into my career.
So
yeah,
that
like into the 100 years.
So to try and help the audience, for those that are not familiar with this, anyone who's used a VPN, right? You take your VPN and you can pick which country you want to come from and go to town, right? So now with what you're describing there, you have attacks that can be coming from anywhere, anytime, that aren't actually where they're coming from. Yep. And trying to piece all that together, that's a ton of information. And yet you're kind of stuck by your specific point of view. And how, if as an industry, we could try to correlate and pull information together, how much more helpful would that be? It's sometimes when you walk in, do you feel like you're only hitting a small dent of an iceberg?
Absolutely. That's why I think, for me, the threat intelligence piece and angle, and I think what you're referring to, Will, is like getting into like data sharing, right, across the industries is so vital. And I love that like I said, I was blessed with the opportunity to sort of build out this team because it sort of opens your eyes. When I started out as a security analyst, I'm only seeing, like you said, this window of whatever alerts that have been built. If there isn't a detection, if there isn't a detection built, I'm not going to necessarily see that activity unless I start threat hunting. Right? Like, and that's we can jump into threat hunting as well. But you know, as a security analyst, that's something that's one of the motivations I had to try to also leave working in that space, because I was limited to just those detections and alerts that would trigger. But on the threat intel side, you're trying to understand, like you said, you see VPN traffic. Well, which threat actor is known for using said VPN, right? You're trying to piece together all of this information and really try make it actionable, right? And threat intelligence, by all means, it's not easy. We're lucky enough to have a bunch of providers that we subscribe to and pay for at Snowflake, but you kind of have to buy your way in. These companies are sitting there in the deep and dark web. They've established personas. It's not easy to get into certain Telegram groups, or certain dark web like websites or forums, and so it's definitely not easy. It's exciting and it's fun, but there are a lot of specialized providers, and there are providers focusing on let's say East Asian threat actors, Eastern European threat actors, right? Like there's threat actors all over the world, obviously, and infiltrating and penetrating those communities isn't easy. But again, I think you bring up a great point, Will. Once you start expanding, as a security minded individual, expanding your scope, trying to understand how other events have impacted other organizations. I mean, that's where this whole supply chain issue, which has been a significant theme last few years. Like if said vendor has gotten popped via this TTP, okay, great. You can look at that and go, oh well, thankfully it wasn't me. But no, you should understand how that happened, because you could be impacted as well. You could be next, right? So you want to understand the tradecraft, the TTPs that were leveraged against organizations that are in the same space as you, to try to better prevent that from happening to you or your organization.
So, from your perspective, now here's a hard one. You're in the industry, you're working with others. If you could wave a wand to help make this a better space and to do things more effectively, far beyond just your company or whatever, what would you like to see happen in the industry? That's a big one, right?
Yeah. It's if I could wave a wand, I would say finding the perfect balance of, which I think everyone struggles with this. All leaders especially struggle with this. The perfect balance of security versus usability, right? It's an age-old, sort of balance and dilemma that organizations struggle with, right? And I'll break that down, right, as simple as I can. If you want to secure your house, well, you can lock all the doors with double bolts and a really barbed wired fence and just you name it, any sort of security mechanism you can think of. Well, what happens? How are you going to leave your house? How are you going to enter your house? Right? You've made your space sort of unusable. It's not practical. So you can take that same concept and apply it to an organization, right? If you have developers, you have engineers, you have just standard users, do you lock everything down and make your organization super secure? It's easy to do. Don't get me wrong. You can just start going in and click lock, 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 lock. But you've now established a really hard, you've impacted culture. You've made it sort of difficult for users to work, especially, let's just say, in a remote environment. And now productivity may be at risk. you know, I'll never forget. I think this has been said to me many times, and it was early on in my career. You know, security. Although we like to think this sometimes, we're not at the center of it all. We're there to support the business at the end of the day because the business is making money, not security. Last I heard, I don't remember security. Although if you're a cybersecurity focused like business, you're making money, but like security is not making money or paying the bills. So our job, we can never forget, is to support the business. And so I know I kind of went around, but if I could, wave the wand and get an answer to something, it's like, what's that perfect balance of security versus security and usability, right? Where you've hardened your environment enough and you have the right controls to where you're able to thwart off, majority of attacks, but also you've allowed or you've empowered and enabled your user base and your organization to operate in an effective manner where you haven't had a disruption to productivity, because productivity is critical, right? You don't want to disrupt your sales org or your account executives. Now they can't do business because you've locked down all this software. You locked down their workstations to where they can't do anything.
I can see Rachel thinking.
Damn. And it's about the usability. So by comparison, my house without locks is extraordinarily usable. Unfortunately, it's also usable to anybody in the general public that deigns to grace my front doorstep. So I put a lock on the door. Does that make it less usable for me? Or is it an extra step that I just accept and then no longer think about as a problem? Because I intrinsically understand the risk of having someone I don't know standing in my living room when I get home.
That's
right?
bad.
That's nice. I like that.
I don't think someone wants that.
But when is it too many? When is it too many controls? Because if I put a lock on my door, right, that doesn't bother me. If I put 2 locks on my door, still not bothered. If I put 2 locks on my door, a security camera, a privacy fence with barbed wire on top, and a keyed coded gate so I can pull my vehicle in. Like, when does it become too much? I wonder, though. Like, really?
Yeah.
When is it too much? Because you know what? I am paranoid. And but then I know people that just leave their door open all the time because they're like, it's fine.
Yeah.
Well, by the same token, when it can be too much is when your friends stop visiting you. They won't come to your house anymore because it's too difficult to get in.
I'll just go to
That
their
would
house.
be the customer analysis, right?
Right.
When customers
Yeah.
stop coming.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I don't know why, but this little thing popped into my brain, ADHD squirrel, because I asked you, Haider, when you got started, like, how did you just wake up one day and decide, right?
Mm.
And I was thinking about, and I never really sat down to think about it too much. I got into it. I don't know how I got into it. I just got into it. And I got interested, and I went down a squirrely rabbit hole one day, and I started teaching myself all these things, and it never stopped. I'm still here, and I'm still learning all these new things every day. And that's the great thing about our industry for the neurospicy kind of crowd is you can't hyper focus and then be done. There's no done. It still goes.
The landscape never it'll never stop changing.
No, it doesn't. There's always more interesting things to learn. And if this has become not so interesting, that's okay. We can pivot a little bit over here to the side and go down this tube, right? Like, there's so many. My very first interaction with a digital security control that I am like, that was an extra step. And I remember being excited about it was, I don't know. Okay. So I'm a bit of a gamer, less so now that I'm a mom, but definitely. My husband and I met playing World of Warcraft.
Oh, very nice.
Okay, like that's how we were introduced to one another. Out of all the servers and all the factions, he was on mine, right? Like, okay, we got from Blizzard these little fobs, and it was my first time ever interacting with like an MFA situation. We got these little fobs. You had to pay for it. You had to pay extra to have them send this to you, and it was like a keychain. And you pushed a button, and a code would pop up. And to log into your World of Warcraft account, you would also be, if you enabled this, right? They didn't call it MFA. This is like 15 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't call it MFA. They called it something else. I can't remember what it was. But anyway, it was this little keychain. You guys, I have to find it. I'll have to take a picture for you guys because I have it somewhere in a jewelry box, I think, for some reason. Anyway, it doesn't work. But push the button, code would pop up, put the code in, right? It worked like MFA. So, and the idea was that, I don't know if they still do this on Warcraft. If y'all chime in, go ahead. But we experienced a lot of like scammers in Warcraft that would come and try to take over your account. They'd sell all your stuff, like sell all your digital assets. Basically, you're like, no, oh, my gear is gone, right? And then you'd have like, there's just nothing left. Like they would just empty out all of your characters, and they would sell this stuff for real money somewhere else. And it was horrible, and it was awful when it happened to people because there were so many people. I mean, Mila Kunis. I saw a TikTok the other day where Mila Kunis was admitting that she knew she had a problem with World of Warcraft when her agent logged on to contact her.
God.
Right? I was like, that's a problem, sis. But people would commit so many hours to this game, right? And pour all their time in. So whenever you logged in and your character had been naked and all your stuff had been emptied from all of your bags and banks, it was devastating. It was really. I'm trying to explain this for people who aren't gamers because all the not gamers are like, wow, what a nerd. But anyway, so we got these little MFA fobs to keep that from happening, and we all knew better, right? That was my first experience, and I paid for it. I paid for the extra security, and at first it was a hassle. The first 2 or 3 times I was like, shit, I gotta go get my keys, right? Because I wouldn't keep my keys with me everywhere. But the peace of mind it gave me was worth it. Like so much. It was so worth it. Turn it on. I was like, why don't they just give these away with a subscription? Like, this is amazing. What a great idea. And I don't know how much money they made. It was 15 years ago. Yes, I worked for Activision Blizzard King for like a few minutes, but like that wasn't in my purview. I wasn't checking up on how the 15-year-old Blizzard fobs were doing. Like, but I just wonder how did they generate any revenue from that? I wonder. Somebody got to tell me. I need to know. I need to know so bad.
The difficulty is with the customer, right? How many folks
to adopt security? What a great way.
How many folks may complain, not want to do that token until they actually got hit? Maybe it took the learning experience to actually want it.
It's
human nature.
That's exactly it, Will, right? Like, and elephant in the room, we recently, at Snowflake, have been dealing with this, right? And using the World of Warcraft example that you alluded to, Rachel, I'm not a WoW player, but I'm familiar with a lot. I have a lot of friends that do play. You're talking about hours and years of playing and building your character to where they're at. Like, I know individuals who have done it for a living, and then they sell their character for like $20,000, right?
Like so there's
money associated, right? And not to say that's small, but when you're talking about now organizations, right? You're talking in the millions, right? There's different assets, and again, it comes back down, Will, to your point, like this whole security versus usability, and what is the balance? What is the right controls to have in place for your organization, for your customers, for whatever it is you're trying to protect? And I think, Will, I think you said it, human nature. What's your what is your tolerance level? What is it? How much do you value something? Or I think to everyone it's different, because there are, Rachel, there, the way you describe that house, there are some homes like that, right? With a
Yeah.
barbed wire fence and cameras, and
I
it's
live in South Louisiana. They're
beware
here.
of the dog. You'll get shot if you step foot. Like there are homes like that, and then there are folks who, if you pull up to their front door, it's going to be unlocked, and you can you can walk right in.
Walk right in. Make yourself at home. And sometimes those people live on the same street. You know what I mean? Like,
But
it varies.
this is where I think awareness and education, use, whether it's user awareness training, customer awareness, really comes in on understanding the importance of these controls, right? Like when you when you really start to inform customers and try to help them understand that, hey, we're doing this to really help you protect your data, or your assets. You hope that they understand, but again, it's like I said, it's a balance, because more often than not, it's not until someone gets hit, like it's not until their WoW character is stripped of everything they had, that folks would understand the importance and value of that token, to be quite honest, right?
Yeah. I'm just sorry. Look, this is what happens. I will sit in a conversation like this, and my brain gets tingly whenever little things are mentioned, and then out of what seems like left field, and it makes no sense. I'm sorry. Sometimes it doesn't.
That was a great example. No, it's a great example because, like I said, for folks who don't know, those WoW characters, there's blood, sweat, and tears put into building that
Yeah.
character to what it is, and to have that, to log in one day and have everything just be gone. I can't imagine that feeling. That's like walking into your house and everything's just being stripped. Like,
Yep. Like it's gone all the way to the light fixtures.
Yeah, right. And that's not a good feeling. And so,
Copper pulled out of the wall.
hey, but that's what we're here for, right? In cybersecurity. I mean, that's what makes this, I don't want to say fun, but fun, right? Like we are trying to actively stop the bad guys. We're trying to stop folks that are causing this pain to organizations, individuals. Right. I mean, it has a trickle down effect. I mean, when you have an organization that gets popped, and their data is now gone. I mean, that's your data. That's my data. That's his data, her data, right? And
Right.
it's not fun when you start getting, credit card applications that you didn't apply for, or other,
Right.
interesting things that you could get hit with. It's not fun. You're forced to, lock and freeze your credit, and it's not fun.
Hey, did you guys know that you can lock your credit for your kids that are underage?
Oh, I didn't know that.
You
That's
can.
That's a great step to take, because what kid is going to apply for any sort of credit, right? So it should be locked out. That makes sense.
But it keeps other people from using your kids' info right? Because think about how, right? So logging in and having your character stripped. Think about hitting 18 and realizing your credit's already in the hole and you owe somebody like 40 grand.
That doesn't sound very.
I'm just saying. You can do it. You have to go to the Social Security Administration, but you can like lock it like you would a credit card account that's been compromised or whatever, and you just lock it down. Like it's still there. They still use it, but you can't use it to apply for anything for loans or stuff, monies. You can't ask for monies.
Data is the new crude oil, right? Like, I mean, data is everything. I mean, that's what everyone's after, and there's value to it, right? We see this on the dark web where folks are, ransoming organizations and then trying to extort them and, ask for millions of dollars, right?
Anyway, I recommend go do that. Go do that. If you've got kids or like, if parents or whatever, guardians of small, tiny humans, just tell, hey, did you know you can lock down their social security numbers and keep them from having their credit scores pre-ruined for them?
So this is kind of falls into the whole industry from my point of view. Okay, here I'm going to soapbox. Ready?
I'm ready. I've been waiting on it. Here you go.
I think the big problem is here we have technology as a whole, right? Everything that you do every day on technology. And people have been able to break in and take advantage of it. To me, that means that the design of the technology maybe needed to be done a little better in the first place. Well, that's out of the bag too late. Features, as soon as we get features, that makes money. That's how the whole thing drives. So now we come in as cyber professionals to try and clean that up, try to plug the holes, try to make things better. And then when you think about it, with things like multi-factor authentication, things like that, they're actually kind of kludges. They're ways to try to protect what's already there. And maybe that first design wasn't quite as effective as one might have hoped, with just usernames and passwords. And so
That's
we're
the
trying
feeling I had after the first time. So our house flooded a couple years ago. I'm sorry to interrupt you, Will, but I got to. Our house flooded in 2016, and when we bought our house, it's our first home, right? First homeowner's house. So it's not the greatest, and it's definitely not new. And we were one step up from having like old tube and wire. What do they call that? Whatever the electrical. Our electrical was real behind, and we had to update all of it. But first, we had to secure what was in place. The thing wasn't. Our house wasn't even grounded. Like we were real, right? Okay. Anyway, sorry. Just wanted to say that part. Sometimes you inherit stuff, and you gotta do the best you can with what you got. I'm just saying, I can relate. I've been there.
I'm in that situation. I'm in a 1950s house. Anyhow,
Right.
So you've got that complexity. We're trying to fix it. And that's when we try to go back to the users and say, okay, now this is what you need to do to be able to actually be secure. And the elements that are difficult with the technology is that some of it is now too complex for your normal user to be able to be comfortable with. How many users know when you have a good certificate or a bad certificate when they're hitting a website? What is a certificate? So then we now come to the stage, like you brought up, Rachel. Is it now at a point where we need to enforce getting to a higher degree with like having two-factor or whatever? How do we make that judgment call? Because the risk is, will the customer stop coming?
Yeah. Right.
Right.
If they can't get it, like, yeah.
And so then the solution then becomes, okay, let's educate everybody. There's a real risk here, folks. You're going to lose everything. It's going to be bad, right?
Right.
That's why you have to do it. It's hard. When you put all that together, it's hard. So if you come across any, like you've said 100 times before, Rachel, when you come across any cyber group professional that's dealing in a company situation, give them a hug.
Yeah, they need it so bad. Be nice. Don't be an ambulance chasing jerk. Be nice. Do you think there's a disconnect or misunderstanding in the general population with understanding that their data is that what? Personally, I know. Wait, what? Do you think there is a disconnect? Oh, it's from Meg. Do you think there's a disconnect or misunderstanding in the general population with understanding that their data is them? Personally, yes. I know it took me a while to realize that my personal information that is out there is like being physically it is. I do feel like there's a disconnect, not with you, Meg, because we've talked about it, but I feel like
it's your digital identity, right? It's your
yeah,
digital identity, and it's your digital footprint, right? I think that is what it is. The same way you have a physical identity and a physical footprint, you have a digital identity and a digital footprint. And I would say that protecting and securing your digital, footprint and identity is just as important as securing your physical one, right? In the world that we live in, because think about it, everything is connected, to the internet and, on our phones or some piece of hardware somewhere. So, really trying to look after it as best as you can is all the more critical, especially with all the breaches that are happening. I mean, it's not a matter of if, but when, right? Like
right.
that something is going to happen.
But now when you consider that all that is done through technology, how complex have we made that?
Well,
Should people have to go through all that? Because they now need education in a major way to even understand how to begin to do that.
Yeah, I'll one up you and say, right, like we're now getting into uncharted territory with generative AI and LLMs and you know it's like it's gonna feel like it's gonna be battle of the machines at this point because we're there's sort of two ways maybe sorry not two there's multiple ways to look at this. There's one, it's like you have organizations, every one of their mother is looking at Gen AI, LLMs, and how to leverage it in their technology, their stack, their organization in some way, shape, or form. And it's been the focus. On the attacker side, I will say, and blue team side, there are threat actors actively leveraging this technology, and that's scary because then it forces us as blue teamers to try to understand how to defend against it. And as you mentioned, we're still, in the industry trying to, I think it's been a tall order to try to, secure, what we've done as humans. And now, not you're adding in this whole sort of wrench. You're throwing a wrench at us and saying, oh, well, now you have to figure out how to defend and protect against, generative AI and you just whole artificial intelligence, LLMs, and like just this whole space. And that's scary. That is scary because it's going to be powerful. So it's almost, like I said, for us, we're looking at leveraging these technologies in everything that we do in our security tooling to try to defend against it when it's going to be used against us, right? And that to me is probably one of my biggest fears, because it's going to be, yeah, it's very powerful.
And how do we automatically protect the user? Because they don't have the time to get the education to understand the complexity.
Yeah, but you know what? I think it's like, so, and I, especially for like my kids with their digital personas, right? They're little baby gamers, right? They do Roblox and Fortnite, and they like to go and say things in comments on YouTube. And I'm like, hey, we need to talk about this. And whenever we talk about why it's important for them to protect themselves, I always equate it back to their own personal health sort of thing. I'm like, so look, there's some stuff we do on a daily basis that we understand is for the benefit of our overall health. It will help protect us from the low-hanging fruit sicknesses that we can be really uncomfortable with. I know, Meg, 2 minutes. So Meg's like 2 minutes, Rachel. So you get up every day and you brush your teeth because we all understand that oral hygiene, right, is good for you. Because if you got some sickness in your mouth, you're just going to feel awful everywhere else too, right? It happens. That's how you get all kinds of gross stuff. And you got to make sure that those tools that you use to do your hygiene with are also clean. I don't know if anybody else knows this, and if you haven't had little kids, maybe you don't know it, but anytime one of your kids has strep, they make you change out all the toothbrushes in your house because that's where it lives, and that's how they're getting it over and over and over again. Or, why do we clean our bodies every day? To remove all this bacteria and gunk, right? To keep out skin infection and different stuff. And then there's extra steps you have to take. Say, if your kids are in school, you got to go get their vaccinations, right? Because they're going to be exposed to more risks this way. And so we talk about it and equate it in that way. Their digital personas, there's daily hygiene that they need to do. And then there's, specialized hygiene that they need to do. And they need to be able to visually check themselves for any cuts, bruises, right? In the metaphorical sense of for their digital personas. So that's how we equated it at my house. If anybody has any better suggestions, please let me know. I will happily try them out on my kids because they're doing pretty good. But like, I'm always happy to see how it, like, just throw that spaghetti at the wall to see what sticks. Because I got 3 of them. They're 6, 7, and 9, and they are squirrely and hard to manage sometimes. Right now they're doing really good. You wouldn't even know kids live here right now. They're so quiet. Meg's yelling at me. Haider, thank you for coming and hanging out and letting us ramble on. And I know you don't feel well, and I hope you feel better.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It's been
Yeah, this was
a
fun.
great conversation, and yeah.
Yeah, awesome. And thank you for your incredible descriptions.
Yeah,
You did that very well.
it was.
Much.
It was very, very good. What is local prepper? What's a local prepper? Anyway, you guys have a fabulous weekend. We're doing this again next week. I'm too sick to tell you who. I don't even have it queued up. Maybe Meg can look at it. That's my job. Meg says 2-minute warnings. That's my job, dear. It is. Meg, can you check and see who we have coming on for next week? Because I already forgot. But anywho, that's horrible. We will see you guys next week. Same bat time, same back channel. It's my friend Rachel Giacomosi. There's going to be 2 Rachels.
Oh,
She's
no.
the principal research lead at Microsoft. Sorry. Sorry, I got very excited. I just read it. I love Rachel so much. You have no idea. Every time we meet up, Haider, you got to go to GurCon with us and come and hang out. Have you ever heard of GurCon?
I have not.
You got to go to GurCon with us. It's so fun.
Pull me in on that one. Yeah.
Yes. It's in Grand Rapids, Michigan.
Okay.
She goes every year. I go every year. It's a Rachel squared kind of situation. Now we try to drag him to it. We have to get a plane ticket because he works in higher education. So anybody that wants to donate to Will's plane ticket.
Well, I might be able to work that out.
Let us know. It's important.
Trying my friends.
But it's going to be Rachel next week. So check that out. We'll have the event set up later today. Follow the Secure Nation LinkedIn and you'll be notified whenever that is up and running. Or you can also follow the YouTube at the Human API, all one word, and then it'll show up there too. But y'all, stay beautiful, stay proactive, stay secure, and thanks so much for grabbing a cup and circling up. This is the part where we all wave and smile. Bye.